Does Bran eat Jojen in A Dance with Dragons? It's one of the darkest but oldest A Song of Ice and Fire theories out there. But is it true? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we dive deep into the history and lore of George R.R. Martin's world of Ice and Fire, as well as other great fantasy worlds like The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher. If that sounds good, the subscribe button is... well, I don't know where the subscribe button is on your screen, but you know what to do. Does Bran unknowingly eat Jojen in A Dance with Dragons? If this is the first time you've come across this theory, then it might sound quite far-fetched, but it has been popular in the Song of Ice and Fire community now for years, and with good reason. So, what's the theory? Well, it all stems from that moment near the end of the last chapter we have from Bran's POV, when the children of the forest bring him what they call a paste of weirwood seeds, but doesn't seem to be just that, in order to awaken his magic powers. This is what we read. "The trees will teach him," said Leaf. She beckoned, and another of the singers padded forward, the white-haired one that Maura had named Snowy Locks. She had a weirwood bowl in her hands, carved with a dozen faces, like the ones the heart trees wore. Inside was a white paste, thick and heavy, with dark red veins running through it. "You must eat of this," said Leaf. She handed Bran a wooden spoon. The boy looked at the bowl uncertainly. "What is it?" "A paste of weirwood seeds." Something about the look of it made Bran feel ill. The red veins were only weirwood sap, he supposed, but in the torchlight they looked remarkably like blood. He dipped the spoon into the paste, then hesitated. "Will this make me a greenseer?" "Your blood makes you a greenseer," said Lord Brynden. "This will help awaken your gifts and wed you to the trees." So Bloodraven and the children of the forest feed Bran, still only about 10 years old at this point, something that looks veiny and made Bran feel ill. And when he gets back to his bedchamber afterwards, this is what he finds. Hodor carried Bran back to his chamber, muttering "Hodor" in a low voice as Leaf went before them with a torch. He had hoped that Maura and Jojen would be there, so he could tell them what he had seen, but their snug alcove in the rock was cold and empty. Hodor eased Bran down onto his bed, covered him with furs, and made a fire for them. 1,000 eyes, 100 skins, wisdom deep as the roots of ancient trees. Watching the flames, Bran decided he would stay awake till Maura came back. Jojen would be unhappy, he knew, but Maura would be glad for him. He did not remember closing his eyes. What follows is Bran suddenly seeing vision after vision through the Winterfell weirwood, going back in time. It's the last we see of him in the books we have, but just in this short section we learn that whatever he ate definitely did awaken his magic. And we also learn that this coincided with the disappearance of Jojen and Maura. We'll get on to Maura in a moment, but Jojen, let's talk about him. Jojen arrived at Winterfell because of a vision, and on his father's suggestion. From what he says, he has been contacted directly by Bloodraven through his green dreams, and figures out that his role is to guide Bran north of the Wall to Bloodraven. He was always a bit melancholy by nature, and given to giving out sage advice, leading to old Nan calling him little grandfather. But this increased as they travelled north to the Three-Eyed Crow's cave. In particular, he repeatedly hinted, increasingly heavily, that he knew when he was to die. When in danger, he would simply say, "This is not the day I die," pretty confidently. And when they finally reach Bloodraven's cave, Jojen seems to just give up, seeming to accept his fate in some way. We read this. Under the hill, Jojen Reed grew ever more sullen and solitary to his sister's distress. She would often sit with Bran beside their little fire, talking of everything and nothing, petting Summer where he slept between them, whilst her brother wandered the caverns by himself. Jojen had even taken to climbing up to the cave's mouth when the day was bright. He would stand there for hours, looking out over the forest, wrapped in furs, yet shivering all the same. "He wants to go home," Maura told him. "He will not try and fight his fate. He says the green dreams do not lie." Maura starts to cry. His green dreams, she says, as if that explains everything. The green dreams that told of his death, and seemingly are the fate that he isn't fighting, staying in the cave when he would rather be elsewhere. At which point Bran goes off into a train of thought, wondering whether he could walk into Hodor and go over and comfort Maura, when suddenly this happens. The thought made Bran feel strange, but he was still thinking it when Maura bolted from the fire, back out into the darkness of the tunnels. He heard her steps recede until there was nothing but the voices of the singers. That is the last we see of Maura. She clearly hears something. The children of the forest, their spell singer magic users, were clearly singing. Some kind of magic was taking place. It all feels very ominous, particularly as it is followed by, "The moon was a crescent, thin and sharp as the blade of a knife." It's a phrase repeated several times in this chapter. When added to the apparently human bones littered throughout the cave, the chapter ending with a blood sacrifice that Bran magically tasted, and the repeated dark and bloody and death-like imagery in this chapter. Seriously, this is one of the darkest chapters in all of A Song of Ice and Fire. We're being set up to expect something horrific happening just outside of Bran's perception. It's also worth noting that, as well as Jojen knowing the time of his death, Bran eating people is actually more of a theme than you might think or like. You could even call it foreshadowing. Which is not to say that Bran is knowingly eating human flesh. It's always implied or second-hand, but it's definitely a theme. When warged into summer, his direwolf eats the bodies of some Night's Watchmen, the ones who had turned on Lord Commander Mormont at Craster's Keep, which means that Bran tastes it. Cold Hands brings some meat back from the same scene, saying it is a pig, but, well, let's not dwell on it. He tastes the blood of the sacrifice in his weirwood vision and thinks about the rat cook who served a king a pie made of bacon and his own son, no fewer than 9 times. It's all very gruesome, and clear that Bran, despite his age, is on a very dark path at the moment. So what do we have on this theory? Jojen, someone who does have true green dreams, knows when he will die, but keeps going until he reaches Bloodraven's cave, when he seems to give up hope and just accept his fate. Maura, his sister, who obviously cares hugely about him, suddenly jumps up and rushes off towards the sounds of the children of the forest casting a spell. The weirwood trees and the children of the forest need a sacrifice for magic to work in a cave littered with human bones. And Bran, surrounded by foreshadowing of eating human flesh, eats something that seems veiny, which clearly, magically, has allowed him to see through the weirwood trees. It's quite convincing. Do I think this is true? Well, probably, at least unless and until we hear more. It fits Jojen's arc perfectly, and Bran's as well. It's very dark, let's not beat around the bush here, but we all know that George R. R. Martin does have horror arrows in his quiver. The more important questions going forward will be firstly what this means for Maura, if it's true. She ran off to see what was happening, so will, at the very, very least, suspect or perhaps even have witnessed what happened. Will she try to get Bran out of there? Even before this, she was starting to doubt the point of bringing Bran north. Will she now try to take him back south to Winterfell? And Bran? Well, he may not have known what he was eating, but he did eat it. The whole point of him going to Bloodraven's cave seems to have been met. He has been told that now, whether it be weeks, months, or years later, he will be able to see beyond the trees, so anywhere, anytime. And he had those visions while asleep in his own cavern. He doesn't need to be physically hooked up to the weirwood network for this to work. He is now one of the most powerful people in the whole world, wherever he goes. So Jojen Paste is an horrific theory, but very much in line with how George R. R. Martin writes, and very much in line with the character arcs he has created. And perhaps it even frees Bran to head back south to Winterfell again. He has now achieved what he needs from Bloodraven's cave. The next step is back down south and to use his newfound abilities to save the Seven Kingdoms. Jojen's sacrifice was beyond horrible, but it may save all of Westeros. If you'd like more videos breaking down A Song of Ice and Fire, please click on the playlist on the left of your screen now. Or if you'd like to support this channel, please click on the link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.